this is going to sound bad. Your idea is worthless. Okay. There's no one's going to pay you because you thought of something. Like, that's not how it works. That's how most people really do like get into creative concepts. Is, oh man, I've got this really good idea. I wonder if I could sell it, or this will make a lot of money. Your idea is worthless. That's the first thing. The hustle is what gets you paid, or what gets you to complete your project.
Welcome back to Keeping It Real podcast. I'm with a video game designer, Tim O'Donnell. Welcome, Tim. Thank you for joining me on this show today.
Absolutely, Thomas. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
And first and foremost, I'd like to start out with, who are you and how did you get into game design?
Well, like I said, my name is Tim O'Donnell. I have 3 little kids, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. I have an amazing wife who is really good with the kiddos. Most of the time, it's actually me at home with the kiddos. She works in medicine. And I've also got 3 brothers, 3 sisters growing up. And so that's a little bit about me as far as how did I get into game design? Whether it's video games, board games, I just basically had a life of that growing up with all my brothers and sisters. With the 3 brothers, they always want to play war games and strategy games, and 3 sisters want to play like fun games that are just super lighthearted. And so it gave me a broad spectrum of concepts and how people like to enjoy different ways of playing games. I lean towards the war strategy games. That's what my games are designed around. The board game that I'm creating is called Brothers War, and it is a board game as it is right now, but it needs to be a video game. And so that's the direction that we're going towards right now as a team, if it were, that my co-designers are trying to push it towards.
And where did that idea start when you wanted to go with that creation of Brothers War?
Yep. Okay. So the original concept, we played a lot of Risk as kids, and just playing Risk, it's just little dudes on a map. That's an industry term for board games, and it just means there's guys going around taking different territories on the game, and last man standing wins. And we really liked the concept, and so we just played it so much that, honestly, like most classic board games, it's kind of the same thing over and over, and there's not much difference that happens. So we wanted to make a board game where there's a lot of different scenarios that could happen. So we just kind of started making our own game just for fun. Then I ended up going to college and just kind of kept it going because of the different mechanics in the game. It allows us to play online, or just even through email, or even over the phone, just to allow us to stay connected. And I met my wife in college. We had a kid, and that, me being the stay-at-home parent, I was able to, at first anyway, start diving into how I can really develop this game instead of it just being something I do here and there. It started becoming something that was more of a creation, was a design and a full-on development with a good 8 to 10 guys at a time, plugging in and giving ideas and being play testers, really. But it was mostly just family, and then some friends of family, just guys that were wanting to play a strategy game, a war game, similar to Risk, or any of your listeners have ever played Axis and Allies. There's a really old game called Diplomacy that it takes what we thought were the funnest aspects from those games, and then we added a lot of the mechanics that we tested out and thought were fun, and just made our own game out of it. And originally it was actually called Conquest, is what we were calling it, just to give it a name. But once I eventually got into the point where I needed to potentially market it, we had to change the name because there's so many other games that already use the name or the word Conquest in the title. And so just for searchability, the name needed to be unique, but also plug into the game itself. And so turns out that, I mentioned I had the one kid, and then I was able to, since I'm the stay-at-home parent, have the time to really start designing and developing. But that was only when the kid was really small, like less than 1 year old. I get a lot of times people say, "Oh, you have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and but you're at home all day, every day." So people without kids usually say, "You must have a lot of time to really develop the game." And then people with kids are like, "Oh my gosh, you have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. You must have no time, no free time at all to develop the game," which is more accurate. Yes, once they get past, like, I don't know, 6 months, they're not napping for 12 hours a day. It is a lot of work, and I really don't have a lot of time to actually develop as it is right now. But they're getting older. Once hopefully COVID is just part of the community and not taking over all of our lives, and things can get back to normal, kiddos can go to school, and then I'll potentially have more free time to full on develop and market the game itself.
And I'm starting this conversation, I sat down and starting this conversation. I sat down before and made me think of watching this very unique style of it's it's a Netflix original, and
Hmm.
the name is escaping me at the moment, but if I can look up, what was it's a comes from the series of the Black Mirror movies. I don't know if you ever heard of this, and the basis was on creating a video game, and
Okay.
it was actually a very where the viewer can actually choose at certain points what direction the movie would be going in, and I could
Okay.
I could do a quick look up real quick as I'm talking, but
Yeah, I don't think I've seen those particularly. I remember doing that with books. I remember there's a lot of books that are kind of like that, where you can make decisions, kind of like a game. Where, okay, if you want the character to do this, you go to this page, or if you want the character to do that, then turn to this page. Is that kind of along the lines of the Black Mirror?
I've heard of those books too, yeah. But as I'm using it, like, tell about what are you excited about today?
In regards to this game specifically, or just creative?
About anything, what's going on? What are you excited about today?
Well, overall in life, I'm excited about Christmas coming up for my kids. When you have really little ones, you really dive into what they're going to want and just getting them excited. And particularly how that relates to game design is that they see me at home making the game. They want to play it. They're much too young to play a strategy board game, but it doesn't mean because the game itself is kind of modern warfare game. So it's basically like a game with the world map on it. And so what I do with them is I have a little atlas that they play on, like a big board map, and it just kind of is a way to teach them about the world. And so we just kind of put little soldiers on the atlas, and they design their game. And so that's been cool to see a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old create and think about what rules they want and how I get to help them with that. Honestly, I've been doing more development with them doing that just because I, have to in order to be a good parent too. I've been doing more development with that than my actual game as far as total time spent doing one versus the other. But that's actually been an exciting thing because part of being in design or an artist, so to speak, or just something creative is that you don't want to just have one project. You really can get bogged down by having that one thing. And like we're talking about, what are we excited about? If you have multiple things that you're plugging into, then I've learned that it helps to rejuvenate the juices of thought, so to speak, to one idea that you could be developing could not work for this project over here, but then you got this other project that, oh, well, you know what, this thought didn't even come to my mind when I was doing this other project or game. maybe it'll work on this one. And then it kind of just gets the ball rolling again, the creative thought back to another project. And then you can put the first project that you thought should be the priority and should be the one you're really focusing on now becomes the secondary one. And you can kind of go back and forth with the multiple projects, and it actually helps them both develop. Because if you get bogged down on that one project and you've got nothing going on, then there's no creativity. It's like having writer's block.
That's cool that you can involve the whole family, especially at a young age, and
Yeah.
see them in that creation mode that time.
Yeah.
But as I asked that question to everyone too, but as I did look it up, and the movie is actually called that I think very interesting. It's called Bandersnatch.
Bandersnatch?
Bandersnatch. It's a
Okay.
Black Mirror. You can look up just Netflix Black Mirror Bandersnatch, and it'll come right
Okay.
up. And it's based on creation of video game creators.
Cool. That sounds like a good one to watch. I wrote that down. I'm gonna look that one up. I appreciate that.
And it's a very interesting way. It's one of I know I saw a few others in not so recent times that actually did the interactive map the way it did here, but it gives pretty much two different ways you can choose, and very interesting.
Okay.
What are you grateful for?
What am I grateful for? Well, there's one glaring answer that I would always give, which is I'm grateful for Jesus Christ and the sacrifice He made for myself and each and every one of us. But in regards to what else is going on in my life, I'm grateful that my kids are healthy, that they don't have any major problems that they're dealing with right now, and that my wife is happy. And that alone right there, just having those things pretty much makes my life an enjoyable life, because there is a saying, you're as happy as your least happy child, or there's also a saying, happy wife, happy life. So I feel like those are two things that are currently going for me right now, which very much helps with creativity and game design, because you're not having to put up so much energy to try to do things and change everything to create happiness for others that you love. Being grateful for having that helps me do what I want or need or desire, dream to do myself. So I'm grateful for that.
So all these games, and I know you said a little bit about these other games too, Conquest, Overthrow, Commanders. Are these the basis of your favorite video games that you were growing up as a child that you play, and you're sticking with that genre, or what is your favorite style?
Yeah, I would say genre would be a good way to put it, because they're all very similar. It's all based on either some kind of a global or regional conquest or domination. The Commanders and Overthrow and Conquest games, they're all kind of stemming from the original project. The Brothers War game is the very complex, very large game. And these other games kind of, like I was saying, when you have multiple projects, you can kind of pick and pull. Well, this Brothers War big game kind of is like the mothership, and these other games are being able to pull mechanics from it, and they're actually forming into their own games. While I do have other concepts and ideas that I want to go that are not this genre, that, like, for instance, having kids, I found that it's much easier to teach them through games. So there's a card game called Star Realms. It's an old Kickstarter deck building game. It's a lot of fun. It's beautiful. And so they're very interested in it. And I taught my 5-year-old and 3-year-old how to calculate math from using Star Realms, because it's basic as, this ship hits you this many times, you start with 50, authority or defensive points, and once I get your 50 defensive authority down to 0, you lose, I win. So they wanted to learn the math. So I would like to make a game like that is for the purpose of teaching the kid just math instead of like Star Realms. It does that, but I really had to simplify it for them. So if I could just design a game like that, because I've looked around, there are other games kind of like it, but they basically just copy core mechanics of other games. Like there's a game that kind of teaches conjugation for reading, but it's just Uno, and it's less fun than Uno. So my idea would be to create the game that's as fun as Star Realms, but is simplified for someone just learning 2 plus 2. So with that, as easy as making expansions as they get older, that could be in schools, it could be for home schools, for any parent really that just wants their kid to have fun while learning math, because they are the best in their class at math. And I really do think it's because of how early they were able to pick up the concept of math from playing this game. And they had no idea they were learning math. They were just trying to play the game. So that is another genre I'd really like to get into, is kids development learning games.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no doubting that video games are very influential in young kids' life, especially when you're talking about with these first person shooters, and
Yep,
how it teaches violence,
it
and
does.
and we're seeing that come out in reality as well.
Yeah, from that going off, not trying to make a huge rabbit trail, but yes, Fortnite. Uh, there's a lot of studies about games like that, or Call of Duty, even Halo. Just the big time games, and they aren't good studies. Usually, when there is a study about it, it doesn't reflect good things. So, as far as making video games, I wouldn't want to make a shooter like that. I don't get me wrong, I play those and I do love those games, but I don't really have time anymore. But when I did, I loved them. But there, when Fortnite really first got big, I remember seeing on Twitter that Fortnite was cited in 200 divorce hearings. Not saying that Fortnite caused the divorce, but the fact that it's coming up as an issue when the divorce is having a hearing, like that's something to think about. So the games I would like to make wouldn't be so intensive as you have to be in front of your TV screen and things are live. That's the type of simulation that a board game can do, but it's laid back, it's more chill. That's kind of the industry. The board game, or the online board game gaming industry, is more about just social interaction and getting together than about crushing, everyone and killing the opponent in violence. You're just rolling dice. Really, it doesn't even have to be about a war or global conquest. It could be worker placement, where instead of placing your army, you're just placing your engineer, and he's trying to build a structure before this guy is building his structure. And then it's just kind of more teaching, maybe even like capitalism or growth of competitive nature within within a country or industry. So it doesn't have to be about violence. And so I'm kind of glad you brought that up.
And another one that's I've been hearing, and it's been increasingly, it got really popular, Minecraft. And
Yep.
I had a totally different. It sounds like it's this war game, mind game kind of thing. But I've been actually hearing how it's been, like, as you say, a good kind of a teacher. What's your thoughts on the type of
Yep.
game that Minecraft is?
Minecraft, I would say, compared to other games that kids might be playing, would be the one you would want your kid to be playing. I haven't played it a lot, but I do know that my friends who have kids who are of age to play, like 4 or 5, they're the ones that are saying, yeah, get your kid into Minecraft if you want creativity instead of violence. So there is combat in Minecraft. You could fight bad guys, and you can I believe there's an open world way to play where you do get to interact with other people, but it could just be creative as well. It doesn't have to be about conquest. And so, yes, I would say that's the video game, if you're gonna have one, which you pretty much, I would say, kids these days are gonna expect that. There is an expectation, not that it's absolutely necessary to keep your kids happy, but learning how technology works and interacting with different interfaces is actually important for the development in a continuingless, paperless world, as far as learning technology, developing, getting them prepared for jobs that are all going to be on iPads or computers. I mean, if you look at schools now, yes, everyone's got an iPad at home because of COVID. You have to, you're the teacher at home. But even when I was talking to the teachers, like, hey, I don't want my kid on an iPad all day, and they're like, well, even if he does end up coming back to school, that's all we do anyway. So you're just not going to be able to get away from it. And so they are aware that the games exist. All their friends are playing the game. So you want to, if you feel like, okay, well, I don't want my kid to be the only one not playing Fortnite, but maybe he could be, if they're also playing Minecraft, I could get him on Minecraft, because that is as creative as Fortnite. Fortnite, there's a lot of good things for creativity. You don't have to actually kill anyone to win a game. It's a lot harder. But Minecraft is very important to development, just to have an alternative way of playing if they just gotta play games. Some kids they just want to play. They don't want to get out and run around. That's my oldest, my 5-year-old. He doesn't want to go run around like my 3-year-old. He just wants to sit and play on his iPad, and I don't like it. So I'm happy when he wants to develop his little board game on the Atlas with the little soldiers or whatever. But when he wants to play a game, I try to steer him towards Minecraft or other educational creative games myself.
Yeah, I heard, especially some with all the virtual learning going on. It's become increasingly important for kids that don't be on Zoom for more than like 20-30 minutes, and taking breaks is extremely important. It makes them get up. I even
Right.
heard there all these classes, and one of them is PE. Is like, how do you do PE in Zoom?
You don't. See, I have a personal, I don't want to go off here, but my kid's PE class is a joke. And literally, what they're doing, I'm not going to say where he goes to school or which county or anything, but what they're doing is they have the PE teacher there put up a screen, and they're watching some other kid play a game, like play a sport. That's what they're doing. That's what PE was. So, like, I'm gonna be honest here. My kid doesn't usually participate when PE is going on. I take him outside and we play. You know what I'm saying? We're like, okay, well, what are you
Yeah.
supposed to do in PE today? You're supposed to be throwing up a sock and catching it. Okay, let's just go play catch. You don't need to look at a screen to do that. And honestly, the PE teacher hasn't like complained or anything that my kid's usually not there, because I think they understand. Like, they wouldn't want their kid in front of a screen all day already. They're doing it for so many hours, and he's so little. It's like he can't even sit that long. And I've got these other two kids. There's no way I can sit with him while I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. It's impossible. It's not going to happen. So I've got to get him off the iPad and engaging with those other kids, because he's not going to school. He's not getting social interaction. He's not learning social skills, which in my opinion is one of the biggest, most important things a kid will learn at school, is the social interaction, how to make friends, how to not be inappropriate with other kids, and just learning barriers and boundaries for social interaction. It's just so important. And the more we get on phones and computers and iPads and are forced to do it, whether because of COVID or because of regulation or rules, depending on where you live, the less we really have relationship. And I really think that's kind of one of the biggest things of why we're here, if we want to get into that. But I think you know what I'm trying to say.
So I want to get back into like going into the mechanics of video games,
Okay.
but I also want to like point out something. I think I heard this one thing is done is when we're talking about like on the subject of PE in the virtual world. They actually have. I think I heard this. It may have been might have had like an idea on like of how it could be done, but they actually have the kid go outside for like 20 minutes and run. You can do like run around the block or something, and then they'd have to do something where they pretty much prove that they did it as well, and it forced them to go outside, get some running activity in, and
Yep.
step away from the screen.
Yeah, I would like something like that if there is a way to keep them accountable for that.
Them accountable too. That would be the key thing there.
Right.
But as keeping with that in mind on how the mechanics, whether creation or whether it's for the actual gamer, the person playing the game, how they work and how do you want it to work for them as it supports them in a positive way? How would you want it to work as you
Are you
create
talking
these
specifically
games?
for my game and how the mechanics work, or what are we trying to get
For
into?
for your games as you create them,
Hmm.
and we can
Okay,
then
so
get
I would.
later on in a journal for other games too, but start with your games.
So the main mechanic of my game is actually simultaneous action, and that's why it can work as a video game as well, because everything's happening at the same time. You don't have a turn. Everyone's actually inputting their orders if it's a combat game, or they're inputting their workers if it's a worker placement game. And then the game administrator will make sure that each person, they do take turns, of course, indicating what is happening when, but there's different ways to do simultaneous action. There's ways where everyone can pick a card and then you have to play a card all at the same time. That way no one can cheat. Everyone has to roll dice at the same time, and then you're only given a specific amount of dice or dice faces to choose from, type of thing. And those things can happen simultaneous. A lot of games now have these shields that block the dice, and so everyone rolls at the same time, and then you can change some of the face of the dice behind the shield. That way, no one knows what you rolled. So those are different simultaneous action mechanics. Specifically, my game, the way we play is a little old school. It's a little pen and paper is another way to say it. You can literally write down what you want to do. And then since we're not able to play in person, we do play in person, but the current game test players are all playing on Discord or Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator. And what they do is they write down or type up their orders, and then the game administrator, which is usually me, will go in and physically move the pieces as if they were here doing it themselves, and all at the same time. And so that's where it really gets complicated, because as things happen simultaneously, they interact, and those are things you have to anticipate. And so that is what makes this game unique, so to speak, what makes it fun. There's open dialogue. Okay, so like you're playing poker, and you've got the guys and you're making bets, and everyone's kind of talking. There's always the guy that likes to lead the conversation and make a lot of noise and just try to get you to give a tell of what you're going to do or what your cards are. There's that fill in simultaneous action with an open dialogue. If you're literally writing down, I'm going to go attack him, or I'm going to put an engineer there, I have to write that down, but I also have to keep it secret. And if this guy next to me keeps on trying to talk to me about what I'm going to do out there in front of everyone, I have to keep it cool, and I can't give a tell of what I'm going to do. So that is a big part of what makes it fun, as far as how simultaneous action works in my game specifically. But there are different ways to make simultaneous action. I've gone with pretty much the most complex way. There are much simpler ways, but my design team prefers the complexity. We want it to be more strategic. We want there to be more decisions, always having to consider what's your opponent going to do. He could do this, he could do that, he could do that, instead of, well, he could do this or that. So let me just guess which one. No, you've got to guess. There's 10 different things he could do, and you've got to read your opponent. So that's what I think is the most fun part of the game, is the open dialogue. And thanks to Discord and other things like Discord, if any of your listeners aren't familiar, it's just basically a platform you can create a login, plug games into, and we post pictures of the game itself, and specifically the game is in rounds, so we post a picture of the round, and okay, everyone needs to submit their orders, and the game administrator will administrate each of your orders simultaneously. That way there's no way anyone can cheat. And then we talk about it openly and we joke about it. You got people putting gifs on all the time about how they're going to do one thing and then they do another. And so it's been a big experiment to dive into simultaneous action as the core mechanic. And we've really gone down a lot of different avenues of how to make that work. And it's been a lot of fun.
And there's a lot of reasons why to create this fun game for people to play, to connect, whether it's on Discord or if they're in the same house, and maybe they're in different rooms in the same house on the same network, and you can have two different machines connected that way as well. That would technically be on the internet. How much thought have you put into having we talk about when you're going outside versus staying indoors playing on your video games, you're not getting the motion.
Yeah, the
You're not
exercise
moving,
and
you're not getting the physical mobility, but there's the exercising of your mind. How much thought goes into that when
so
you
I do have a game that I've developed called Ascension. It is an outdoor game. It's not really like football or like sand volleyball or anything, but I used to work with a youth group a lot, and they were always looking for new ways to just have fun. And as a game designer, it was easy for me to just be like, okay, well, let's just put a hula hoop over there, and this team's on this side, that team's on that side. There's a ball, and you have to keep the ball ascended, which is where the name Ascension comes from. And so we just kind of started making rules one time at youth group, and it turned into a pretty fun game. The bigger the ball is, the more fun it was. So we figured that much out. But I would say that outdoor games would be something I would actually prefer to make, but you can't do a lot of play testing. You have to have that constant group, and you have to have a platform where you would be given that group of play testers. I mean, you could always like try to get a group of parents, but you don't just have usually a group of parents with kids or like a young couples group or young people's group that always get together, want to try new games just to make one. So that I feel like would be a lot more challenging, especially now because of COVID. But as far as playing a board game or playing a video game and having to just sit there, yes, that is one thing that game designers pretty much don't have a lot to offer as far as video games and game designs. There's a lot more kinetic games than there used to be, with games that you can even play on your Xbox where you're wearing a headset or you have the hand device and you're moving. You're doing bowling, you're doing tennis. There's a lot like that. The different dancing games and instrument games. That is a fun family activity to do. Actually, gets everyone up and moving. So even the kid who doesn't want to go outside and play, if there's a game that's designed, if you got the creative thought to make a game where you're up and moving around, doing whatever, the video game kid will usually want to plug into that to some capacity. And so that is certainly in the spectrum of creative design, would be trying to figure out how to get people or the kids to actually get up, move around, exercise, get the blood flowing, because that's a whole new spectrum of social interaction. You know what I mean? And so I think that's what really people want when they sit down and play a game. An old saying is, a game isn't fun itself. It's as fun as who you play it with. And so I think that is pretty true when it comes to your relationships. And if you don't really have fun playing games, maybe you're playing with the wrong people. but a lot of it does come into personal preference. Some people don't like open dialogue games where they're trying to read you, or they don't want to be combative and take out your base or your tank or whatever. They just want, let's just play let's just play Uno. I could make you draw two, but I'm nice, so I'm not going to. There's a lot of different ideas to make games for different people, and that is a huge challenge for any game designer, is trying to make a game with a broad enough spectrum of how people like to play. Because I'll be honest, the Brothers War game itself, I know that we've talked about a lot of other games. The Brothers War game itself, if you don't like war games and strategy, you're not going to like the game. It's not going to be a huge money maker, but that's not the goal here. It is just to provide a game for people like myself who really love those games, because that's what I'm passionate about.
Kickstarter. Have you used anything like that to raise funds for whatever it is you need to create? Have you yourself used that to in game creation, or whatever? What type of stuff have you done?
So I've actually got on Kickstarter a lot. The first thing that one should really do before they want to use a platform like that is to start buying things on Kickstarter and figuring out how it works, because the process actually takes a really long time. So my games are not to the point yet where they can be sold or marketed for a Kickstarter campaign, which in and of itself is a huge, huge task, because having a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old doesn't allow for a Kickstarter campaign. Maybe if I lived near like family or like at a grandma here in town, but it's just me, my wife, my 3 kids, and we don't even have like neighbors around here that like babysit, you know what I mean? So like stuff like that really throws a wrench into moving the game forward. The dream here is to play with friends and family. That's the dream, and that's what we've been doing. The only reason we actually started to potentially talk about as let's make a design team. Let's find someone who can code, and let's find someone who can market, and let's find someone who can print 3D pieces so we can have whatever we want for game testing. Once that started becoming part of the conversation of just the few of us who were playing, we were able to actually put together a design team. And then randomly, I had a guy from my church who I kind of knew came to me, and he said, "Hey, I'm actually an investor. I like to invest in a lot of things, and I know you're a hard worker, and I think whatever you do will have success. So I've heard about your game, and I want to invest in that." And so when that happened, I was like, okay, so now I've got someone who wants to put in money on the ground floor, just because of the relationship I have with him, and he knows my work ethic. That is what really launched. Okay, now we're going to go see how this works. So we started going to board game conventions, and we started going, having design meetings with professional game designers. And the main thing that I really learned about board games, that is, video games is a whole nother ball of wax. I haven't been able to dive into the video game side of it as much as the board game side of it, as far as design and creation. With board games, there's not a lot of money in it. It's a booming industry. The geek culture, so to speak, is on the rise. So there's a lot of players who there didn't used to be. That used to just be, okay, there's Risk, there's Monopoly, there's Scrabble, there's these classic games, and every household had like one or all of those games. Now there's 10,000 games. So there's a lot more money being put into board games, but it's not about buying. It's not about everyone owning the same game as it used to be. So you're not going to have that one hit like Monopoly that makes you money enough for it to be your primary job. So in board games, you have to be pumping out like 4, 5, 6 games every year. Okay, so that means it's like basically it's your job. So these actual professional designers that are teaching me these principles, when I go to the design meetings and we discuss that information, they have other jobs. They have 40-hour-a-week jobs. Their wives have jobs. You're not going to, unless you just get that golden hit. And even if you do that golden hit, they don't, in the current landscape of board game design, they don't really sell that many copies to support your family just for making one game. It's not like that anymore. So you really have to have lots of games going on and finished products and doing Kickstarter designs or teaming with a development or a Avalon Hill company that puts out a lot of games every year. There's a lot of companies like that. But if you're listening to this and you plan on getting into board game design for the money, don't recommend it. But if it's something you're passionate about, it's a nice thing to do on the side. That's the key. It's a passion that's fun, but not about the money. That's for sure with board games.
What about taking the concept of like a board game style and maybe not taking that exact game, but making and you might have said this a little bit too already, but making some of the board game styles for video games, for even if it's online or
Yep. So that is something that is currently a plugin that we're doing. We're focusing on putting our game Brothers War on Tabletopia. It's actually there. We can play it on a platform of Tabletopia. There's another board game platform called Tabletop Simulator, but it's for anyone to play on that, you have to have a login and you have to have like it costs money basically. So most board gamers, they just want to play for free, which again, that's why the money thing isn't really there for board games, because people just want to play a casual game for a little bit here and there. So there are a lot of ways now, and if you know a coder or somebody that can really help you out, if they make the game and actually turn it into a video game, that could be something that's sellable. If you make a board game into an app, then you're getting revenue from ads or from clicks, and that's a little different. So I haven't got to really dive into that. Eventually, when my kids are back in school, all of them, and I have free time again, I'll be diving into that big time to see if I can actually, once my kids are all in school, I don't need to be a stay-at-home dad anymore. I'll need to find a job, and I might be doing that job of game design. So I would be looking into creating these board games that I've made, a few board games on a website or on making them into an app. And so that will be something that I get to do later, and I am excited about it right now. The current game I have, Brothers War, due to the complexity, and that is what we want, it would take so many, because I've talked to a lot of coders, and they said, you need a whole team of people. First of all, the game needs to be done, and it's not done because we're continuing to try new things and make it fun. That is the current goal, is we want to make it fun. We have about 20 to 30 active, depending on the month, active game players, active game testers who play through Discord or Tabletopia, and they want it to be fun. They don't want to always have to try new things. They're like, hey, I just learned this game. Now we got to try these other rules because the game's still in development. And that takes so long to do. And without me being able to do that constantly, again, because the kids are more important, obviously, it just is going to take so long to turn it in, to finish the game, so to speak, and then to pay or raise the money on a Kickstarter campaign, because doing one Kickstarter campaign is so much work, and doing it for the first time is so hard. Just like anything else, it's so hard to learn how to do it successfully and to really set yourself up, because a lot of people, they'll create something, they'll try to launch on a Kickstarter, but they don't have a grassroots movement. They don't have any Discord groups. They don't have Facebook groups. They haven't advertised at all. They just put it on Kickstarter and expect people to scroll through and find their creative idea and then fund it. And those people never get funded. So before you ever put something on Kickstarter, you really need to do your homework of how Kickstarter works and how to actually create a massive following before you even launch a Kickstarter. And that takes so much work and so much time. And you even sometimes need to pay someone else to help you do that. So between paying an artist, which is very expensive, paying a design team, paying someone to help market and get that grassroots movement going of a bunch of people who are excited about your Kickstarter campaign, and then paying a coder or a team of coders, which my game would take. That's a lot of money. Now, Kickstarter is supposed to be where you get that money, but you have to do a lot of that stuff up front. You have to pay the artists up front. You have to know how the game design is going to work. And then if you don't want your project to take 3 to 4 years, and with COVID, sometimes it takes that long now, these projects that launched and now they can't complete what they thought they were going to be able to complete, because so much of their stuff was coming from China, because that's the cheapest place to do it from. Even after Trump changed some of the China rules, it was still cheaper to make a board game from China. So that's where it's all coming from. A lot of it's not US based. There's a lot of great US based design companies that will help you make a game of any design, but usually people are going to China still. And so it takes years to, even once you've finally funded on Kickstarter, finish the project and then release it. So you're paying a ton of money up front. You're hoping people then back your project, and then you're taking a few years to finish it and get it to them, and you're not making money on it. I mean, if you think you're going to go into Kickstarter and like, okay, I'm going to make this and make money, it's not probably going to work out for you. Usually people that actually make money through their Kickstarter projects have been doing Kickstarter projects, and they understand how it works and the cost and all that. So for me to do it for the first time, having a lot of kids, so needing to be very frugal with how I spend my money, the timing is just not there to create a Kickstarter. But as far as getting to know Kickstarter, that's my biggest advice, whether you're doing any kind of creative project, to launch on Kickstarter or GoFundMe, you really got to do your homework and see what you're getting yourself into.
And I want to maybe touch on that a little more, but yeah, it's one thing, and you touched on it too, is you really need a team. Like you can't do it. A lot of people try to do everything solely on their own, and they get burned out. They run out of time, and then
Yep.
you need to find people. I always hear something that you don't know, someone else knows. You need to find people like that, people who are willing to do what you don't want to do, maybe, but is necessary to move your business forward.
Absolutely.
Find those, and it generates you more time for other things than for you to focus on your things.
Yep, that's absolutely right.
Touch on. I want to get a little more in detail on the creative process, but
okay.
Your thoughts first on Discord and I know Twitch is a popular platform for live.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one for video games. Would be Twitch if you're live streaming games. We use Discord. I think a lot of board game platforms use Discord to get the community excited and involved and in touch. And so if, for instance, if someone wanted to play my game, that's where they'd want to go. They could get my email. They could do a search for through Discord to find the Brothers War server. They'd get a warm welcome. We would plug them immediately into a game that's starting up with other newer players. That's a lot of times what a player doesn't want to do. They don't, I don't want to play your game and then just get smashed and not have any fun because it's just me against a bunch of experts who've been playing and designers. They want to play other people like them who are just casually wanting to play a new game for a little bit. And we have that available to them. And so will be fun to try out a new game. If there are any of your listeners who would want to play a strategy board game, would I be needing to spell out my email for your listeners, or would you want to have some way to post that?
You can give it to me, and I can whatever you're willing to give for reaching out. I'll get at that towards the end before I get into my wrap up questions. Where can we go to sport, and I'll escrow that too, and then I'll
Yeah.
also have it typed up for all clickable and everything.
All right, that sounds
But
good.
like my big thing on playing online video games, I'm a big sports guy. I've worked in sports digital web for 10 years,
Okay.
and I sometimes get in on the live online play for these NBA and MLB games, and
Okay.
every time I don't like to say every all the time, but every time I get on, I end up getting with ver- versing someone who's playing me,
Yep.
who just beats me like really crazy, and
Yeah, because that's what they do. They sit down in their basement and they play all day. Yeah, no, that's
and
how
it's
it
like
goes.
yeah, and you get to the ones who are like, he just quit the game. You can just quit the game when you. So I don't want to come
Yeah.
on and just be beaten to a pulp. But like I'm trying to understand like the whole thing, like especially behind like Twitch, people can I've seen on they stream a game for 2 or 3 hours, and
Yeah.
what's the whole point of streaming a game and having people watch you play a game? What would you
Right.
think your take on that?
Well, a lot of people do that. They actually kind of make some money. Some people just are like, "Oh, this guy's funny. I'm gonna donate $5 to his Twitch account, or I'm gonna go check out his other videos that he's posted." And if they have an ad as part of those videos, they actually get a little money each time. So I'm okay with that. I think that's a good idea. It's a way for, especially through COVID, man. Everyone's at home. They're trying to find ways to make money, and people who got money to just, if you got $5 to that you actually have that and you want to give that to me for playing, you know, NFL 2K or Madden or something, that's cool. That's a good way. That's a good revenue stream if you're already playing those games. So yeah, I'm on board with that.
All right. Any advice? I know you listed out a bunch. You said some things already, but any advice, either if you're a gamer or if you're a creator, whatever you have, and if you have advice for either of those or any of those, what would you have for
Okay.
the gaming
So
genre?
it's the biggest piece of advice that I was given that I can give someone else for being a designer or creative person is that your idea, this is going to sound bad, your idea is worthless. Okay. There's no one's going to pay you because you thought of something. Like, that's not how it works. That's how most people really do, like, get into creative concepts. Is, oh man, I've got this really good idea. I wonder if I could sell it, or this will make a lot of money. Your idea is worthless. That's the first thing. The hustle is what gets you paid, or what gets you to complete your project if you're not really worried about the money. Is doing the work. Is when you have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and you're exhausted, and you're like, okay, they're all napping at the same time. I'm gonna go lay down. No, I can't go lay down. I have to go develop. I need to do this for the game. So it's a hustle. It is a lot of free time that you're not going to have anymore. So I'm not watching Netflix very much, with any time I've got, if I'm even lying there with my 1-year-old, because my 3-year-old, 5-year-old are playing together, I'm going through Reddit, looking for different links, looking for artists, looking at different concepts and ideas for uh, like people that are posting it to me to be like, hey, I'm an artist. I pay this much. This is what my look, this is what type of art I do. So you just got to find the correct artist for your project. Or I'm looking for Facebook groups, or just scrolling through Board Game Geek games, because a lot of times a game will come out and it's like, oh man, I just made it. I was trying to make a game that's just like this. And if you're not paying attention to your market, so know your market would be another good piece of advice. If you're not paying attention to the game that's popular, and then you are trying to create one and you launch a Kickstarter, and everyone's gonna be like, wait, you're just trying to copy this other game, and you didn't even know that other game existed. So there's a lot of that going on. I can give you a big piece of advice, especially in board games. You don't need a patent. Okay, look at Scrabble. You don't think Scrabble wanted to sue Words with Friends or Word Feud or the other 20
Oh,
Scrabble based
really?
games? So they can't really sue you if it's not exactly like the game you've made. They have no legal grounds. It'd be a waste of money for them to
That's
try to sue you.
interesting.
So you don't, and again, in board games, and I'm pretty sure in game design this is how it works, but in board games, you don't need to waste your money on a patent. You don't need to tell people. You need to sign a non-disclosure confidentiality agreement about what we talk about. Like your game testers, they don't need to be signing confidentiality agreement. You want them to talk about your game. You want them to bring other people in. That's what the grass movements is. That's how you get spread out into the gaming industry, so to speak. So a big thing for game designers is board game conventions, which again, COVID is totally screwing that up. But before COVID, there was board game conventions all over the world, in every state, in every major city almost, in some smaller cities, and sometimes multiple a year, where you could go to things like that. And there's video game conventions. So whatever your creative product, if it's art or whatever, you can find a convention. And really, conventions are fun, man. It's a bunch of people like you that are trying to either just enjoy whatever you're making or also design what you're making, and you trying to keep your idea to yourself. Like, I don't want to tell this other designer what my idea is. He might steal it. He's got 10,000 of his own ideas. He's not going to steal your idea. He doesn't care about that. Your idea is worthless. For him to do all the work that you've already done, it's going to take him a lot longer since you've already done it. So your idea, if you haven't started any work on it, is nothing. So those are just a few points, but you have to be going to conventions. You have to have a platform to play on for your play testers. You have to have, whether you don't have if you can't afford to buy a website or have a website or web design, you don't have to have one. Discord, Twitch. There's plenty of other ways to get the information and to have a landing spot with information, like with rule books or with pictures or with concepts, or just a way for people who are excited about the idea you have that you've created, and the game you're making or whatever, they need a landing spot to go to play. So for me, that's Discord. But for someone else, it could be a Facebook group, or whatever. You got to do a website. Usually it's a website, but a lot of times, to make a good website that's legit, it's going to cost you a little money. So I can't really put that into it right now, but Discord does everything I need it to. So actually, I don't need the website, so it works out. So that's I got other things I could advise on, but that's I think that's a pretty good start.
That's a great advice. I have a quote here, but that I thought of, but I shared on my socials yesterday. But like going into that, you need, it's just finding wherever it is you go to, finding that community, finding the people that you can go to, like see what they're maybe looking for, seeing what demand is for something, if you want to even go down the road. And I came up across this quote that I wanted to like just speak out real quick, because how I'm, a lot of other people are big on quotes by.
Yeah.
This looks like Italian name. Sorry if they ever listen. This Gioconda Belli, who said this: "The world has always gone forward when people have dared to have crazy ideas." So all ideas start out crazy at first, worthless,
Right.
and it's how much you have the time to put in and develop the idea to make it worth something.
Absolutely.
We touched on Twitch, Discord, Mind Exercise, Kickstarter. So advice: how can someone get into support? How can someone play or support your projects?
Yeah. So I believe you. I don't know if you can search a specific server on Discord, but if you can, our server is called Brothers War. So it's 2 words. And if you can't find that on Discord, if you're not able to, you would want to just contact me through email, and then I could send you the Discord invite. You could get in there. That would be the best way to do it right now. Usually don't give out my cell phone, but email would be the answer there.
Yeah, anything you'd be willing to give out, I'll put up on the in this link too on this episode.
Okay.
Anything. I'm not asking you to like force anything you don't want to give out. I'm not asking for that. Definitely not.
Sure, absolutely. Well, there is live games. We do have a couple of different places, like in Dallas. We have a few guys. That's where it originated. That's where I'm from, Hurst, Texas. So there are a good amount of guys in the Dallas Fort Worth area that are playing. So they do some live games. I think there's one going on this Wednesday. So if you wanted to have your first game be a live game, it's not a big group. It's usually 3, 4, 5 guys. So if you're trying to, keep your party's size small, that will be, a big factor. And in January, actually, I will be going back home. I've lived in Orlando like 12 years, but I still consider Texas home.
Mm.
From January 16th to the 24th, I am going to be back in Dallas. I'll be at a B&B where we will be playing board games literally every day. We'll be designing new concepts. It's a way for me to see my family, but January 16th through the 24th, I will be in Dallas and we will have live games going on. And we will be putting them on Discord for the community to see, for the Brothers War community to be able to see what's going on. And if any new players want to come out, they'll be more than welcome. We'll be excited to have them.
And in your support thing, you mentioned, of course, the Discord.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple others here who could read by, and you can give me the info on all these, and I can put this up. But what's
Okay.
table?
Yeah, Tabletopia. That's
Tabletopia.
it's like a sandbox basically where you can. It's a website. You go on to it. You have to be on a computer though. It's not mobile yet. You go on Tabletopia and you can, as long as you know how to play the game itself, you can play almost any game, any board game, for free. And so you can. This game is currently on there. You can go on there and play, and there will be a rule book. But usually, I actually introduce myself for a first time game player and walk them through how to play because of the complexity of the game. But again, that's how we want it. A lot of players don't like strategy war complexity games. A lot of board game players, but that is our goal. We want that. So if that's something that sounds fun to you, you can send me your email and then I'll get you invited into Discord. We can get you on Tabletopia as well, and we can get you going. The other way to play would be to print and play. We do have a Google Drive where the community can pull stuff from. If they want to print their own map at their house, we have 3D prints. If they have a 3D printer and they're like, oh, cool, I could just print my own pieces and play at my house, you could do that too. Usually we just advise to use pieces from other games. If you want to print the map, it's just, you can print in black and white at your house. You'll just have a map there and you can just use pieces from around the house. That's how most board games first start out, is they're designed with, household items, and then, things get creative and you go from there. But I did have conventions. I used to go to conventions, and you could go to the convention and show your support by playing there in public. And as a board game designer, you get a table. You put this big sign up that says, "Gamers wanted." Random people from all over come and play, and that's a lot of fun. But that's not going on with COVID. So hopefully next year that'll get started again. But it doesn't look like it.
What is that? Some maybe not a convention per se in January, but did you say like it was going to be a convention like that you're coming
So yeah,
in
what
Dallas?
I'm doing, yeah, in January it's so a convention usually there's like thousands of people, but what
Mm-hmm.
I'm just doing, there's me and my co-designer who actually like designed the map, and he designs the 3D prints, because it actually takes a lot of work to design a new 3D print. Even if you're going off of a base model, you really have to work to create a new product, because there is some design patents for that. Like you can't just print someone else's design and then sell it. You can't do that. But if you change it enough, then it's not their design anymore. Just similar to a board game, if you change Scrabble enough, it's word feud now, words with friends. So it's still Scrabble, but you're not going to get sued. But as far as making our own pieces, we have pretty unique pieces. There's not a lot of modern warfare games out there with like stealth bombers and aircraft carriers, and that's something we found to be really fun. Is you're not going to be able to play a game like this anywhere else. There's no other game like this, and so we really wanted to focus on it being a unique game where there's not other games like it. And I think a lot of people, when they come to play, even people that don't really usually like board games, they're like, "Oh, this is a fun game," just because it brings in so many different aspects because of how simple it could be for new players. And then once you start playing expansions, you really get into the complexity. There's a large spectrum of ways to play it, depending on how much you really want to play or not play. So
I'm getting to the thinking creativity as but and first want to acknowledge you for going out there and being the video game creator you are, creating what you want to see the kids today and of the future create. I acknowledge you for doing all that you do for these video games. Look forward to seeing even these brothers war, the first person that maybe promotes violence, but there's some other good things coming out of all of this as well. And it may
yeah,
not be the physical, but again, it's good for the mind. But as
yeah.
I just want to ask you as we close this out here, what does it mean to you to create or living creatively?
Okay. I would say being passionate about what you're creating is the key. You don't want to just create something because you're trying to make a buck. Now, if it's your job and you really need the money, that's obviously what you have to do. But it's not something that I would say. I think I mentioned it earlier. You don't get into board games for the money. You don't want to focus on creating for the money because you kind of lose focus on what you're passionate about and what you really care about. And a lot of times, a creation is going to reflect you, and you don't want it to just be shallow. So people see that it's obvious when you go to show them the product. Though this is very well thought out, or this just seems like you just want me to pay you for something I could have made myself. You know, that is a big thing, is that it takes a lot of work, but if you're passionate about it, it will be enjoyable work and it won't just be about making money. But if you're good at it, you probably eventually make some money. Again, we talked about having a team and having people help you, and it takes a lot of work and hustle and putting the time, and takes years sometimes. If you're able to do all that, that's great. But keeping it passionate and not focusing on, I got to do this to pay the bills, you might want to make sure you have another job too. But it's always better to consider, that instead of the money. But you also, you need other creative people to hire. Like you're going to need some money usually to get something going, unless it's like a very simple card game or something just specific to gamings. But a lot of times you can work for someone else and they can see what you're able to accomplish creatively. You can use your creative mind to help their project, and that could create your own projects. That could launch your career. One saying that I remember is that if you want to do something and want to be successful, then join the people who are already doing that are successful. That's how you learn how to be successful. And so living creatively is a lot of fun. And I've had some years where I wasn't able to be creative and I was so bored, and I just was like, this is not how I want to live my life. And so making the time, scheduling, if you don't schedule it, it's not going to get done. I know I've put a lot of one-liner sayings, but that's another one. Like, if you really want something to get done, you schedule it. It will happen. You'll see it on the schedule. There'll be reminders. You make it happen. You don't just say, oh, I need to do this. When I have time, I'll do it. You got to make time. So those are my concepts in regards to living creatively, so to speak.
Blocking out and blocking out calendar time and having
Yeah.
different types of calendar time. You need to have. I listened to some other people like family time, your IPA, your income producing activity, blocking that time out of your calendar because that's important to
Yeah.
have. Yeah, and you
Yeah.
schedule all these different types of fun, personal time, thinking, just creative thinking time. Just you need to have like whether it's meditation or something or
Yeah.
maybe and also just random times anything that you feel you need, create a schedule blocking for it, block out it's block category blocking and just and events would fit in any of those categories and you just allow time for that.
Right. Absolutely.
Very important to the one question. So why do there's what does it mean to you to live creative, to do creatively? Why do you create?
I guess the reason I create is to have relationship. That might not seem like it connects, but without relationship, we kind of don't really have much, in my opinion. I know I talked about my relationship personally with Christ is the most important relationship in my life, and of course my kids and my wife. I have a really good relationship with my three brothers who are helping me design the game. I mean, they're two of them were there at the origination, and one of them he doesn't have a lot of free time like myself. He's got his own four kids, so he doesn't have a lot of time to help create. But when he does, man, it's a lot more fun for me just to have that relationship. So I live out here in Florida, and they all live in Dallas, and now one of them lives in Wyoming and Washington, and a lot of family is in Ohio. But this game literally brings us all together. If it wasn't for this game, we wouldn't have the same relationship with each other, and constantly being in contact and in talk and just having something to talk about. And then that creates other things to talk about. And that's really how a relationship blossoms. And I've been able to grow my relationships with my cousins and uncles. And as the game continues to grow and, family tells friends and friends tell their family and then they tell their friends, you got immediate family that talks to not so immediate family, and then your distant cousins get in on it. And I've got so many great relationships now because of this game that it makes me want to continue to strive and struggle to fight to keep it continue to just blow up and grow. If I being the one to originally create just be like, oh, all right, well, I'm just going to take a year off, I'll get some free time, those relationships are going to struggle as well. And so that would be my primary answer, would be relationship.
Yeah, and when I was like first hearing about the Discord and you talk relationships and finding people, it blew my mind that like things like Discord was existing. I would maybe a little less now, but I'd consider like at first like kind of like the creative dark webs where you go to. Like, there's a lot of creativity and not for video gaming for video creators, anyone creating really, and it's like this creative dark webs, and there's a lot of people. There's a big community in there, and
Yeah,
that's what we
absolutely.
really need. So and final question I have for let you go, and we can close on this. And I started this on a basis of like filmmaking and creative being in film and movies, and I'm expanding that now to any creativity. But
Mhm.
and video game is storytelling in a sense too. Why do you think filmmaking and storytelling is important in our world today?
Okay. I have made one film. It was for my kids. It was pretty funny. So I like to go all out at Christmas. Growing up broke as a joke, not really getting much out of Christmas myself. I go a little overboard. So I buy like, hundreds of Legos and I make all these Legos. And then me and my wife made like a little Lego movie for our kids. And we showed them the Lego movie and they got to enjoy that before they actually then go open the presents and, oh, look, there's the Legos that we just saw in the movie. And they get real excited. And so, answer your original question of what's so good about, creating the movies and stories is that it's almost like an escape. So I go to the movies because I enjoy being entertained, sure, but I could do that at home. But I really want the experience of a movie. Of like if you go to downtown like Orlando or the Millennial Mall out here, if you go there for like a Marvel movie, for like the Avengers, people are dressed up. You go for Star Wars, you got Chewbacca's walking around, and people are just excited to be there. So it's almost like an escape from life sucking, because a lot of people are like, man, my life sucks. And a lot of times, even if you don't feel like that, it's like if you don't say, oh man, my life sucks, sometimes you just feel like that. There's a lot of, valleys in life. And to get away from that, to not think about why do I feel like my life sucks right now, to be blunt, to go to the movies, to get away, to just have your mind on something else other than all the stinky stuff that's going on, then it really puts things in perspective, so to speak. Not as much as like having kids puts things into perspective, but you don't have to worry so much. You can let things be how they are instead of trying to force everything. I know it kind of feels like I'm going off on a rabbit trail, but personally, when I have that escape, when I go to the movies, when I get to spend the time with my family, make a movie with my wife, being creative, it's just enjoyable. It's part of my life, and it's something I can remember as a good part of my life instead of this sucks. Like, so that's what I mean by it puts things into perspective. You've had a great life. My favorite Christmas movie is It's a Wonderful Life. It's 90 minutes of just being miserable and then 5 minutes of like ecstasy. I would say spoiler, but it came out in like 1945. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's kind of on you. But it's kind of like that. Your life there's a lot of stuff's going to suck about life. We live in this world. It's as good as we make it, as good as your neighbors make it. And sometimes it's not very good at all, but to have the escape, to put life into perspective of you probably have life better than you thought you had it, and just looking back at fun times. I guess that's the best answer I can give you.
Well, what I heard from that is like diversifying your experiences.
Yeah.
You need to experience the good, the bad, the ugly. It's don't spend too much time on any of those. You don't want to spend too much time going down that rabbit hole. You don't want to spend too much time with the good, because you won't necessarily you won't know what it's like if it's bad either. So you need to experience it all and diversify your experience.
Yeah,
that's what point. I got from your response, if I could summarize that at all. But
I think I like the way you put it better.
I was definitely, and as I have more of these conversations, I can do that more. I can respond better. I'm understanding as I'm listening and talking, and I'm understanding, and that was just my attempt at putting together what you just told me as well. Yeah. Thanks for chatting about the stuff that you're creating.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope I want to look into this Brothers War and find you on Discord.
Yeah.
I'm just getting into Discord myself, so I look forward to getting into that and learning a little bit more about that too, and getting in all that. But thanks.
I very much appreciate you giving me this platform to talk about my game and just creativity in general. This was a lot of fun for me, man.
No problem.